Welcome all. Welcome to chapter 16, titled Two Paths. This is also titled slightly differently in Sanskrit as the demonic and the angelic way, I guess. Basically, it's referring to asuras and devas, divine and the demonic ways. And yeah, I think for the first time in the like after 15 chapters, uh, this chapter talks about uh, probably what not to do. Like the first 15 chapters are focusing more on what's the path, how does it look like, what are the qualities of people who follow that path, what are the qualities you start to see when you follow the path, how to follow the path, right? Um, and in this chapter, uh, when it says two paths, it's referring to the dark path, right? Like, so if you're walking towards the light or you're walking towards the darkness, and those are the two paths this chapter talks about. And then it kind of describes the qualities of people who are walking towards darkness, or the demonic attributes, and it kind of cautions the reader on what what other signs look like, and that you should denounce those, you should avoid those qualities. And I think specifically there's a lot of, like, there are three gates it talks about: uh, anger, greed, and lust. And also there's, I saw that the word hypocritical has been used multiple times, arrogance has been used a few times, so those stood out for me. But with that, I'll let Kabir share his thoughts on the chapter.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Shashank. So, yeah, I think you summarized it really well. And I believe the reason, I'm speculating, of course, the reason it has come to this point at chapter 16 is that Krishna has been helping Arjun move inside and connect to his inner self and realize that he's more than body mind. And sort of, Arjun has sort of confirmed that he has had glimpses of that wisdom, that reality. And I believe this is the time where Krishna, as his guide, wanted to make sure that, okay, you have had glimpses uh, of your true nature, but you are not established there yet. You are still on the path, whether it's through Karma Yoga or Gyan Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. But you need to kind of mature in this understanding that you are more than body mind. Just having a glimpse is not sufficient. And so he is kind of helping him by pointing him out what not to do, or the areas which are like the warning signs, the red flags. As many of us who have walked on the path of inner journey have realized, and it's so easy to be distracted. And while reading this chapter, I was also reminded a lot about Buddha and the way he talked about it in a very similar way. So Buddha at some point was asked by someone that what do you teach and what is wrong with what we are doing in the mainstream. And I believe Buddha was even less, the way Buddha put it out seemed even less moralistic than I felt it does feel in this chapter. Because Buddha was in a very matter of fact way. He said, see, there are two ways. There is a way where your karmas multiply. So you would continue to be in the cycle of birth and death. You are welcome to follow that way. It's your choice. And there is another way where your karmas start burning, the sanskaras start burning, and you come out of the cycle of birth and death. You come out of suffering. So it's up to you. You are welcome to increase your suffering. You are welcome to end your suffering. It's your choice. And Krishna also is sort of hinting it in those two ways. However, I feel he is almost encouraging Arjun more than just offering those two choices as equal choices. He is quite vehemently clarifying that how terrible it can be if he falls to greed, lust, and anger, and what they do to you, and what kind of hellish realms and how difficult it is to come out of that cycle. And another thing, which I think, which reminded me was that the last words of Buddha when he was dying were Vai Dhamma Sankara Appamaden Sampadet. These were his last words to his followers, which was, Bhikshus, everything is changing. Be established in that wisdom. Don't get distracted by pramad. Pramad means the greed outside, the interest in the worldly things, the interest in achievements, which again is lust, which again is greed, and wrath, which I believe is a more actually accurate translation of the Sanskrit word than anger in this case. Yeah.
Very, yeah. Like, Nadi, you want to add something? I had a few comments, but
Yeah, maybe I can just like, so when I read the chapter, it was the first time when I felt a bit like it tries to tell me what to do. You know, I suddenly felt like this is something where they say, don't be like this, be like that, read those lines and act accordingly. So I suddenly felt like I'm supposed to be in a certain way to be a good human being, you know, and to actually have an aversion against all these other things, because I feel a lot of people, they think anger, for example, is such a bad emotion which you shouldn't experience or you should not have in your life. But on the other hand, anger is something that comes to your life in certain situations. And if you try to suppress it because you think it's not good, because you have an aversion with that emotion, then actually that's not the point. So somehow I felt a little bit like, now it tries to tell me something. While till now I felt these chapters are just a reminder of what you are within, you know. I didn't feel, or maybe I don't recall it, but the last line of the chapter, I think, was something around read the scriptures well and act accordingly, or something like that. And I was like, but that's the point. I mean, or maybe it tries to point towards like, listen to your Krishna within, because I don't need to read an external book. Like the Bhagavad Gita is not like, you don't have to follow that book. It's a reminder that you have this wisdom within yourself with your intuition that guides you on your path to divinity, or you are getting lost in your human worldly experience where these things like greed and power and all of this self-centeredness is coming in. And there's a very thin line between self-centeredness and like a healthy way of realizing yourself and truly know who you are and act accordingly. So yeah, so I felt a bit like it's trying to put life into two, it's a bit black and white. I don't know. I found that interesting how I had kind of an argument with the chapter, I would say, like an inner argument somehow.
like, I think that addresses like my comment. I was going to give a comment, and it's on the same thing which Kabir was saying, the difference between Buddha's approach and I think it's a difference of approach only. Like, one is more suited for intellectual people, probably. Like, Buddha's approach feel more like when you're telling your kid, sometimes you don't want them to do something. Then instead of saying that don't do this, you kind of say, if you do this, this will be the consequence. But somewhere you don't want them to do that because you know the consequence is going to be bad. And I think probably that's the subtle line in terms of approach. Whether do you say, okay, if you do this, this will be the outcome, and let the kid decide themselves, or if you are attached, then I was like, is God attached to us? Like, in some way, is he biased towards us, that he's out of that love, he's, instead of telling us the outcome, the God is telling directly, don't do this. Because with kids, sometimes you just tell them don't do this. So that was one thought which came to me when both of you, like, on Kabir's comment on Buddha versus this book's approach, and what you said, Nadine, that since probably this is a pretty bad outcome, there is a bias in directly calling it out. Uh, and I don't think that it's kind of saying don't be angry in a very direct way. It's like the rest of the book is talking about qualities which will lead you towards something, and these are the other qualities. So it's not that like, at least I didn't read it like that it's saying don't be angry, like, but it's when people get attached to their anger, when people take pride in their anger, I think That's when, and I know people who do that very close to my, like in my family, I've seen that. And that kind of becomes a nature which they say in public that, yes, I don't want to be angry, but somewhere they very much identified with that anger and they don't want to change that. So maybe it's more of a pointer rather than but
Right.
yeah, Kabir, you want to add?
Yeah, I do want to say something, and what Nadine also said and what you said. I have couple of things coming to my mind. The first, I'll come to what you said about being moralistic and absolutist teaching of do this and don't do this, which is usually associated with religions, where if you do this you'll go to hell, and if you do this you'll go to heaven, and that is a turn off for most people who like to independently take their own decisions. And I think, Shashank, you have hinted in the right direction, where even with myself I have seen this. And by the way, even with Buddha, having read several interactions of Buddha, I have seen that Buddha was one way when he was meeting with a formal group or meeting with someone for the first time. But when he's talking with someone that he's familiar with, his approach was more personal. And he used to say things like, "Come on, Anand, you don't want to do that, because then do you know how rare it is to get a human birth? And do you want to really waste it? I don't think you want to do that." So you can see that when he becomes informal, he is not politically correct, so to speak, always. And he is almost advising. And I have seen that happening with me also. When I am starting my sessions with someone, I am more politically correct, and even intellectually, I believe, and my training as a counselor has also trained me to never make sure that nothing comes out as an advice. But when a certain dynamics is formed and other people know that they don't see you in a sense as a doctor or as a counselor who knows more than them, once a dynamics is established where you know that they are using their critical thinking and they can disagree with you, in those setups, found that I myself could casually say something like that, hey, that is really bad. I would never do that, right? I think that will harm you if I understand you well. And so it's also maybe a matter of putting things in certain way more than the intent. So it is not, I wouldn't jump to that judgment. I think there is a certain camaraderie between Krishna and Arjun. They have known each other for a long time from before. But yes, if we judge it just on the basis of this chapter, I would say, yeah, that doesn't sound like a very efficient approach. It can turn off many in the audience. That's one part. Another part, which, yes, which was probably, if I have to share one thing about this chapter, it would be this. It's about these words: anger, lust, and greed, right? And because they are translations from Sanskrit, and over the years also the meaning changes. So I absolutely agree with Nadine that anger, there is certain space for anger, and it is well known. If you look at read the story of Mahabharata, you will see Krishna lost temper at times. He got upset, he got angry, and Buddha of course got angry several times. If you see Buddha's interactions, people who make Buddha's sculptures in this perfect silent smiling person, that's definitely not how he was all the time. Especially, I know that on the matter of any discrimination against caste or women, Buddha could really, you can see that he has been triggered and he's upset, and his words and demeanor will show that. So, getting angry is very human, and we don't want that to go away. So, I don't believe that anger is the right translation of what is being trying to be communicated. It's more like wrath is the right translation for it. Wrath is something which completely makes us lose our balance of mind. and we are hateful in our wrath. Like a mother it doesn't ever have a wrath towards a child. And anyone who has seen that they are not body mind, they never have that level of rage or wrath which will burn them and burn others. It's out of control sort of a thing, which is what is meant here, not the anger, not the and anger can be very strong, by the way. I'm not talking about any kind of sort of innocent anger. Anger can be very strong, but anger is something you can use against any discrimination or against injustice, even though you have not lost your balance of mind. You know where you are, you know what is the situation, and anger is a very genuine, authentic emotion. Even in a state of presence, you can feel and operate from anger. Same way like sadness is definitely part of a healthy human emotion, but depression may not be. For depression, you need to have a very strong identity. You need to hold grudges against yourself or against others and be very harsh in order to reach that state. So that differentiation, I believe, is also goes in terms. I think greed is a accurate word, because had they said desire, right? Because many people misunderstood Buddha's teaching in this case when he said that he meant to say that craving is the cause of suffering, and many people translate his teaching as that desire is the cause of suffering. So you should not have any desires. Or some people say, translate karma yoga as saying that act but don't expect results. And most people, most beginners, we have already talked about it. It doesn't make any sense. Why would I act if I have no desire? Right? So if I don't want a result, why would I do anything? Why would I get out of bed if I don't want certain result? So what he meant is don't have craving. Don't be focused only on the result. Focus on the process. It is let's put the result in the background. The same way here, I think greed is an accurate word, but desire is not. Having desires to achieve certain things is fine. Greed is something, greed or craving signifies that your fulfillment depends on fulfilling certain desire. Greed is something which says that if only I have more of uh, this land or property or money, that I'll be happier, that it will fulfill me, and that is ignorance. So if we cultivate greed and multiply greed, like Krishna said, that is a gateway to hell, in the sense that your identity will become deeper and deeper, and as you become more and more identified, your egoic mind and your karmas will multiply, and the natural consequences, you will fall to lower realms of existence and longer cycle of birth and death, because it would be required to burn all those sanskaras. That's just the fact. And the other one, I believe he says, is lust. Again, I think lust is an accurate word. He didn't say sex here, right? But lust. There is a difference between sexuality and lust. Uh, a lot of sex crimes, when you see, they are result of lust, where someone feels that they lust kind of blinds them to the fact that they might be giving pain or causing suffering to another person in getting certain sensations for themselves. So lust is the problem, but desire for sex is not. So if we understand in that way, then they make a lot of sense, I believe.
I think Kabir they has written like this guy has written in the pre-chapter, he wrote about sexual desire actually.
So you are saying that he has spoken against even the sexual desire.
Yeah, I mean it's not in the
Translator.
verses where Krishna. Yeah, the translator actually has written the demonic personality is basically atheistic. For such people, life does not originate in God or divine reality, but is grounded in biology, in sexual desire.
Okay,
So
I
that's
think
why I
what.
was also yeah.
Yeah, sorry. No, I'll let you complete, Nadia. Go ahead.
No, that's why I was also wondering, like, there's also slippery slope to give these things that people feel they are feeling, and to give it a bad connotation, and people rather tend to suppress it instead of living it because they think it's bad. That's why I pointed out on anger or sexual desire, or all these things are seen as bad in society, so people try not to acknowledge if they may feel that. People rather try to bypass this and pretend or act as if it's not there. And I think this is creating much more turmoil inside that comes out maybe in different ways than just like maybe acknowledging it and letting it go. Like, I mean, Shashank, what you also said, there's a difference between identifying with something like this or to just acknowledge it and let it go. I think that's what the difference is, because it's not that every human is like who is on the divine path is not experiencing anger or maybe sexual desire or any cravings. I mean, the point is that that you are not getting hooked on them. I think that's the thing. It's not that you're never experiencing maybe greed or jealousy or all that stuff. I mean, these things, our society is built in a way it's very hard that you're not comparing yourself with others, that you're not thinking, oh, I should reach a certain maybe lifestyle, or I need to provide for my kids a certain environment because I want for them to grow up well, or for myself I want to be here or there. And you're putting your environment as a measurement for yourself to achieve or to go somewhere, right? But the point is like to catch yourself when these things are happening and to acknowledge them and then let them go. I think this is the art of living life. So it's not about not experiencing any of this stuff, because I think it's not honest, actually. I'm looking at that for myself. Like, I also had a long time opinion about anger. I thought it's not good to be angry, or I was rather trying to put everything in harmony and not express anger, because I thought, no, but it's not helping anyone and it's not creating a good atmosphere, da 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 da. But actually, anger helps you also to set boundaries, for example. It's actually an inner signifier for, hey, something is not going right for you right now. So look at it and see this as a space where you can actually come in the present moment and understand what's not happening in alignment with you right now. Why are you having this emotion? What are you exactly reacting on? It's actually helping you to check in with yourself. So,
Yep. So, Kabir, can we talk about the success and achievement aspect of identifying strongly with that aspect, right? Like, obviously, that's very. I think a lot of sexuality is normalized in our current system. Uh, I'm not trying to be, and I think again, there's a very fine line around uh, like appreciating sexuality and objectifying it in a different way to appeal, let's say from a purely commercial aspect, right? Like people use that so that people buy more, right? Now, I don't see any beauty in that aspect, right? And I think greed is still like not normalized, at least on the, I don't know, capitalism does normalize greed also to a certain level. Like companies are primarily built on maximizing profits for them. And a lot of times people take the liberty to use that logic to do harm to the planet, do harm to people, do harm to a lot of things just so that they can maximize, which I feel is like kind of very close to definition of greed. Uh, Anger, yeah, I think that's a tricky one. Probably anger is still not normalized. And when I use the word anger, I'm not talking about the definition we were using, which is normal, but the more part where it goes to an extreme, basically. But achievement and success is really based on my own upbringing. Uh, I find it very hard to talk about in the sense of where is that line? Where is the line of that being uh, basically lust versus sex, right? Like, where is that thin line between when we're talking about achievement and success?
Yes. Firstly, I might slightly disagree with you in the assessment that maybe this particular aspect, which is the highlight of capitalist worldview, which is true everywhere, I think, including in so-called communist countries today. I think even in China, the worldview is capitalistic in nature, yeah, which is having more and more capital is the ultimate uh, way that you recognize achievement or success even. Yes. So not just this aspect, but I feel that even in terms of lust and wrath, when I see wrath, even the hatefulness you see, the wars you see, the kind of genocides or wars, this is the result of wrath, absolute insensitivity, hate based on somebody's religion or nationality. This is possible only if we have desensitized ourselves. All right. So coming back to the point, so the larger point I was making, that I feel that even the wrath, for example, is increasing. The lust is also increasing largely in the society, and yes, the greed also, right? Which is kind of encouraged in capitalist uh, point of view or capitalist worldview. Yes. So the question, just to repeat your question, and I hope I got it right, was that where do we draw a line? Where do you say that a human being is being productive, he is making a good use of their time, that he or she is living a life of karma yoga or a holistic life, and making good use of their time for themselves and for society? And where does greed come into picture there? Where do you cross that line? Yes, Shashank?
Yes. Like, where does achievement as the end goal kind of, because greed is slightly simpler. I know it is related to achievement, but I'm just saying that achievement as
We can use the term achievement. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Great. So achievement and success, does it align, or do we just, are they synonyms to greed? And how do we differentiate between the two? Yes. Okay. So I believe that it requires us to again see that what are our value systems. And for example, a better question or a prior question to your question would be, what should be considered success or development? When we say that we are developing in life or succeeding or achieving success, what should that be? Because in capitalistic worldview, there is a very simplistic goal, that if you are making more capital, that is more money, more wealth, then you are achieving success. Yes. But if you look at the worldview from a wisdom point of view, from people who have thought deeply, even philosophers or people on their inner journey, when they assess, they all seem to come to a point that no, if you are just increasing your wealth, for example, or capital, but you are becoming unhappier, and you are becoming unhealthier, and you are destroying environment and your society, you are burdening society, or making others poorer in order to gain that success, aren't you creating more disharmony within you and without you? Is it really success? So those are important questions. So once somebody dwells on those questions and clarifies what should be considered development, what should be considered success, then I believe there will not be a problem. Achieving success then might mean what Buddha said, living a kushal life, which he said that you are becoming happier and others are becoming. It is leading you and people around you, the entire society, towards harmony, towards sustainability. A cow, when it grazes, for example, in a grassland, it is connected with the system. The grassland is never destroyed by cows grazing, right? It's inherent in the you can say nature, that if we act in sustainable ways, if we follow laws of nature, then the whole system, it is better for the whole system. The cow grazes, the cow excretes, the excretion becomes food for the grass grows even more, the cows can eat even more, and they excrete even more, and it nourishes the system even more. The whole system gets nourished, for example. So if we as human beings can spend more time on what is meant by success and what is meant by development, then I don't think there would be a problem, because we will be nurturing both the heart. We in Hindi we have talked about it, Shashank, if you remember. The goal can be sukh and samriddhi, which how does it translate in English is living happiness and prosperity, right? Both, which in the sense means that we can build systems and we can continue to grow in a way which is nourishing us, which is making our life comfortable, our family's life comfortable, without being unsustainable, without being exploitative to rest of the society. And that is the natural consequence of wisdom, or growing within also. I can also say that if we are living, for example, operating out of karma yoga, we are going within, nourishing us, at the level of soul, and realizing we are more than body mind. The moment that wisdom starts growing while we are working outside, we can't help but be touched by the suffering of others. We can't exploit. It's impossible for a karma yogi to be exploitative. And you can see with some of the I'm saying some of the even billionaires, for example, who seem to have given even at least little bit of importance to their inner lives. They end up doing a lot of philanthropy also. They are touched by suffering, and they find it very disgusting to just collect and collect and collect. It would be impossible for someone who is becoming wiser in their journey or achievement to just think about themselves and their families. So I think that kind of answers in some ways. I don't know if it helped.
No, it does, Kabir. Yeah. Nadine, you have any comments, any questions? So, it also talks about how, on this path, then, you're back into cycle of birth, rebirth, and especially more and more, it'll get harsher, your life will get harsher in how, but there are also enough stories, and like, how does somebody come out of this then? Like, if that is the direction somebody has started taking, and it feels like a spiral in itself, uh, what happens really that suddenly somebody comes out of it?
Mm. I think we have touched about this area in the previous chapters, which is suffering has something inbuilt. So there's certain grace built in suffering. So you walk on this path of greed, lust, wrath, and you are agitated every time you don't get the object of your craving, and there is so much suffering, and you're trying to go after it, and you suffer even more, and you suffer even more, and finally you get tired of suffering, and you say, what is this? Is there a better way for it? And that might help us, open us, at least create an opening in us to look for the answer, and see if there is a better way than what we are doing. And of course, we wish, and all the spiritual guides, out of their compassion, they wish that we learn from other people's mistake. For example, there are many people who see their parents or their people around them living these kind of lives in suffering, and they don't have to go through the whole circle. I've seen some even 20-year-olds seeing meaninglessness of what the society around them were doing. They didn't have to go through the whole process and suffer to take the right path.
So why is it so difficult to talk about this chapter, right? Like, it felt like, compared to our other chapters, this was uh and is there something, is there a reason, is that also a reason why this is only one out of probably 18 chapters we're talking about these qualities?
These qualities. Well, like I think Nadine mentioned, it is the style is different. it feels as if somebody's preachy, somebody's preaching you, which is not the case with the rest of the chapter. Again, I don't want to be the one who will sit here and decide why did Krishna choose, why did the author of Bhagavad Gita chose this child. But I think it is also giving us opportunity to clarify some of those, you know, you can say pramad, what Buddha said pramad. There's some of those factors that as we start walking on the path, and if we are not alert to these slip ups, so Krishna wanted to very blatantly put it that, don't think these are naive things, Arjun. You may think you're not body mind, and all right, I'm going to be spontaneous, fine. Sexual desire is natural, and you may not know when it has turned into lust. Anger is fine, but you may not realize when you have started, cultivating even wrath and justifying it as a spontaneous emotion in you. Because I have, as a matter of fact, seen this happening with some of the fellow seekers on the path, that they had like glimpses that they are more than body mind, and then they said, everything is okay, and they could accept all aspects of themselves. But in doing that, it's like the little egoic serpent mind is still left, and it was like waiting for the opportunity that yes, they were tight earlier, putting too many artificial rules, which is unhealthy, which is what Nadine mentioned. It's pretty unhealthy to enforce morality on yourself. It leads to the opposite, in fact. So it is good to break out of that. But at this point, Krishna wanted to warn Arjuna. It's good you're breaking out of that. Let's make sure you don't slip on the other side. It's okay to be spontaneous and allow the sexual desire and anger and desires to operate spontaneously now, but make sure you don't fall in the traps of greed or wrath or lust, because they are not. Don't think that, okay, I've had a glimpse, doesn't matter. I can allow some wrath. I can allow some lust to operate. It's okay. No, 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 no. They are very, very dangerous. So he's just pointing that out.
Summary.
Yeah. I was gonna ask the thing, like, I'm seeing this kind of polarity that one side there is all this guilt and shame around these things, right? Like, and that's what we are talking about, that these things should not be talked in that manner, so that it leads to guilt and shame in people who experience that, because it's very normal, it's very human, it's very natural. And then I don't know if you agree with this part, but I also see that a lot of this is also normalized in our society, right? Like, where it should not be normalized, where we should be able to say clearly, categorically that yes, greed is not good, right? Lust is not good. Even anger is not good, right? Like, and again, there's a like tonality to that word, in what tone we are using.
Yeah, we are using the term wrath. Maybe you can
Yes,
say that.
right,
Yeah.
right. So, how do you do you see that? Like, do you see these two extremes, Nadine, in your worldview, in your viewpoint?
So I think everything only gets a meaning if you give it a meaning. Everything in itself is actually neutral. At the moment, for example, alcohol. Alcohol in itself is just neutral. Like a friend of mine, she shared that some time back, and it really clicked to me because her ex-partner back then, he had an issue with alcohol, and she was angry at the alcohol. She was blaming the alcohol for the problem that he was drinking. And then at some point she said, I actually realized alcohol is neutral. It's what the person does with that alcohol, and that's with everything. Are you making this something that means something to you, and then it can either take over the control of you, like what Kabir also said, like it's a very thin line where you allow something to take control of, when you say, oh yeah, a little bit of this riot or whatever, then maybe this little bit that you allow may take over. I don't know. It's about what meaning you give to these things.
In fact, I believe, can I just add to it? And maybe um, I believe that yes, it is shades of gray, but our discussions and reflections, and in fact, people listening to it also, they just understand where are those shades of gray, right? And we understand the red lines and orange lines and what starts causing suffering and what is necessary, and even certain shades are even not just necessary but can be very nourishing, right? But if you take it to other extremes, how it can cause us so much suffering as well. So I don't I'm in fact saying that the way Krishna is putting it, and that's why we were clarifying the terms, that yes, wrath, he is saying in absolute terms that wrath or greed or lust will cause suffering. And he's not hesitating in that. And I don't even think that Nadine is hesitating on that. But she's also clarifying, and we are all clarifying that, hey, but let us be very careful here, because a lot of people misunderstand it. And then they start judging themselves, like she mentioned in her own journey, even the simplest anger you start judging yourself, and that instead of helping do actually help us digress, because self judgment is the way to close your heart, so to speak, right? And to disconnect from your inner joy. So yes, we very much want to have this black and white discussion. We are just clarifying what does that mean when Krishna is saying wrath is bad. What is wrath? And if our society is normalizing the wrath, in which way is it normalizing the wrath? Is it normalizing the wrath? And it is good that we understand, because uh, I do feel that when we are part of society. So I do agree with Carl Jung more than Sigmund Freud on that, where Sigmund Freud was only about the individual, but Carl Jung said an individual is made up of set of conditionings, and the social conditionings and the cultural and religious conditionings also. So an individual is the sum and sum total of all that, right? So that conditioning, so if you are talking to someone and they have come out of certain culture and social conditioning, it is important for us to help them question that, because it is very natural for a human being to seek validation from their society, from their elders, from their colleagues. And if society has normalized and even encouraged certain traits which are harmful, then it is important to have these discussions and such statements from someone like Krishna, saying, hey, come on, be very careful. Aren't you guys, in the name of success and achievement, following the path of greed and going straight to hell? Just be very careful here.
So I think I got my answer to the how do you reconcile these two ends of shame and guilt. I think this is the power of Maya, basically. This is the power of devil, that either it will both get you by making you feel lust, anger, wrath, right? And if it doesn't get you that way, then it'll get you by making you feel shame and guilt about that. When you are actually not, you are not
Yeah.
on that part, then where you are feeling shame and guilt. And that's why it's such an irony, right? That one extreme there is normalization of all of these things, and on the other extreme we need to talk very carefully about this, because I fully agree that there's a lot of guilt and shame which gets associated with these qualities, because when it's perfectly natural for you to experience that, right?
And this is also poetically, we are concluding this chapter, because that's why Buddha talked about the middle path. And we are right here figuring out what is that middle path. And this chapter was about there are two ways, right? One leading to this side and that side. And we are clarifying that for ourselves. Yeah.
Right, very interesting conversation. I think for this chapter, which again was just 4 chapters and 4 pages, and it felt again very straightforward. But we end up always talking an hour more about these chapters. So clearly, there's so much wisdom in these chapters. And with that, we'll see all of our viewers again next week. We are about to close. We are already done 16 chapters. We're very excited to get our next 2 done and share with you. Thank you for being part of our journey here.
Yes. Thanks, Trishang. Thanks, Nadine.